Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the latest webinar that we're producing this month. I'm delighted to conduct a session in celebration of International Women's Month, and I think it was last Friday was International Women's Day, and frankly, I'm always grateful to work with really talented, really generous, really smart women. We've got two of them with me today. So riding shotgun to the session and someone who's instrumental in administering all of these webinars is my colleague Sarah Witt. So Sarah, welcome. And then I'm hopefully going to get this right. Monica Thakrar. Is that close? I don't think I got it. I don't think I got
You're close. Thakrar, you're good.
Anyway, so I want to, if we can go to the next slide. So the session Monica's doing is Women in Leadership, and she's going to talk to us about what are we seeing in the workplace. She's going to talk about, what does the data tell us about women in the workplace. She's going to talk to us about some of the benefits of having women in the workplace. What are some issues that are holding women back? And frankly, interesting, what men can do to support women. So I know it's going to be an interesting session. Monica is someone who, from my perspective, is a little unusual in our business in that she is truly a triple threat. She is a certified executive coach. She is someone who does organizational consulting and also does some training. She is a graduate of Georgetown School of Foreign Service and Columbia School of International and Public Affairs. She's got a really interesting mix of government and corporate clients and does a lot of work helping leaders and managers more effectively lead change, create high-functioning teams, and enhance their leadership capacities and help them deal with how do they work across organizational silos. So we're delighted to have Monica with us. So Monica, I'll let you say hello to everyone.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you today in celebration of International Women's Month, as well as working with Ken and his team here today.
That's great. So before we get underway, I want to cover a couple of housekeeping details, tell you a little about us, then we'll do our first polling question, and then Monica will be off to the races. So some housekeeping details. One thing I do want to mention is that we are recording the session. So if you would like a recording of the session to pass along to some of your colleagues, we're going to show you my email address at the end of the session. Just send me an email and we'll send that out. Second, there are a number of ways for you to participate. Monica is really skilled at doing these sessions, and my perspective, very generous in her approach, and I know she's open to getting questions. And so the three ways you can participate are, one, if you do have questions, at the bottom of your scroll bar, there should be a thing that says chat, and you just type in your questions. Sarah and I will monitor them and we'll feed them to Monica. Second is, we're going to have one polling question, so stay tuned for that. And then third is, again, the session's going to go fast. We're going to end this in 55 minutes. And so if there are questions that you have that you don't get a chance to ask Monica, what we're going to ask you to do is just send me an email we'll forward it to Monica to make sure that she's able to answer any questions that either were lingering, or B, that you thought of, when you hung up after the session. Either way, but we're happy to entertain those. Sarah, are there any other housekeeping details you think I should mention, or we're good to go?
I would just say, I'm sorry, I would just say to keep an eye on the chat bar, because we'll be putting some information in there as we get towards the end.
That's great. And the other thing I'll say is, if anyone has trouble hearing me or has trouble seeing the PowerPoint, just send Sarah a message on the chat bar, and she'll get you all squared away. So let me tell you a little bit about us, because I know we've got some colleagues on the phone, we've got some clients of ours, and then we've got some new people, new potential clients of ours. So the mission of Boxer Advisors is to deliver high impact coaching, consulting, and training to meet our clients' most pressing people development needs. We think that the secret sauce to what we do is integrating our solutions into the client environment. And when we do that, we see lots of examples of measurable return on investment. Next slide, please. The focus of our services is to do three things. One, to help our clients develop more powerful partnerships, either with their internal or external clients. Second is to identify and integrate best-in-class learning, organizational development solutions. And the third thing is, we want to, even in a webinar like this, we want to help people translate insights into action. We believe every time that we have an opportunity to either provide consulting, coaching, or training, there's an opportunity for us to help facilitate the transfer of those insights into actions afterwards. So we're going to try to do that today. Next slide. So again, the learning outcomes of today is we want to think through what are some goals. We want to, as we said, we're going to have a debrief during the session, and if we need to follow up afterwards, we'll do that. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we'd like to do is hear from you. Again, Monica, from my perspective, is someone who is really customer focused. And so one of the things that we'd ask is, we want to ask our first polling question: what are you hoping to learn from today's session? So Sarah, if you get running, and we'll keep that open for another 30 seconds. So we'll go ahead and close the poll in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So Sarah, if you can close the poll and let us see the answers, that would be great. Your roles. I wouldn't have guessed that. Monica, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I think certainly women cannot change the dynamic on their own, and I think there is a role to be had for men in this process, and I think it's very telling in the answer that we got, and I think it's relevant for many many women in the workplace. Ken, I can't hear you. I don't know if you're speaking or if you'd like me to get started.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For some reason, I don't know what my, I'm, as you know, Monica, I'm at a client site and
Yeah.
but I'm back. So I think
Okay.
if you want to go ahead and keep rolling, I think good. Thank you.
Okay. Sure, no problem. So let us get started. Let me just tell you a little bit about the agenda of what we'll cover today. And seeing the data in terms of what you're interested in, we will talk about how men can support women, but there is some lead up to that in terms of just what are the statistics for women in leadership currently in the last couple of years. I'll show you some data and what's going on there. What are some of the benefits of having women in leadership positions? There's a lot of data to support having more and more women in those positions. And then there is some things we as women can do in terms of perhaps what we might be contributing to this process. And then certainly addressing the question on how can we get support from others, particularly men, throughout this process. Now, I put Q&A at the end, but certainly if you have questions throughout this journey, please do submit them. I'm happy to answer, and Ken and Sarah will be helping me track those and asking those questions when they see relevant. But I'm looking forward to having this be an interactive session with you. So let's start
Great.
a little bit with data. And here's some statistics. And it's always, a little bit disheartening when I see these statistics. And this is from Pew Research as of September 2018. So fairly recent. If we just look at the U.S. data, just U.S. data, women make up 50.8% of the population. Women are getting a higher percentage of undergraduate and master degrees compared to men, 57%, 59%. So they're getting very educated. Now, when we start seeing though where they're ranking in terms of senior level positions in the government, 25% of senators, 23.4% of House of Representatives, and this might have shifted a little bit with the newest election in January, so I don't have the data from 2019, but we know that there was a surge of women in the House. But if we look at CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, only 4.8%, 22% of Fortune 500 board members, and 30% of university presidents. So still a very stark contrast in terms of the 50% of the population versus where women are in terms of leadership positions in organizations. And we have been seeing that the data has been increasing over the years, but in the last 20 years or so, there has been a little bit of stagnation in the 90s and 2000s. So interesting just to see some of the trends here. Now, if we look at corporations and the S&P 500 companies, this is where we saw all the way at the bottom, the total number of employees, a little bit less than the national average of women in the U.S. total, 44.7%. And this is coming from Catalyst, and this is as of January 2019, as you'll see below here. But as you see, as they continue up in organizations, it starts getting less. First level managers are at 36.9%. When we start getting to senior managers, 26.5%. Board seats, 21.2%. Top earners, only 11%. And then, as I mentioned on the previous slide, 4.8%. So we start seeing, this idea of this glass ceiling. We always hear about it. We know that we've not reached the presidency from the last election. A lot more women now in the race this year, coming up for 2020. But you can see that we're still having lots of layers of ceilings as women go higher and higher in the organization. Less and less women breaking into the highest tiers of leadership in corporate America. Now, in the federal government, I don't have the statistics, but I know the numbers are a little bit better. We've done some work with another organization I work with at the Partnership for Public Service, and the data is showing better trends in the federal government. So I know some of you on this call here are federal employees, but I don't have the specific data, but it's certainly higher than the 4.8% in the corporate world. So let's look at what are the benefits, though, of women in leadership. And a lot of research and data here as well. You can see from McKinsey that the financial returns for corporations are above their respective national industry by 15% when we have gender diversity. There's also increases in innovation when we have women in top leadership roles. They call it the innovation intensity, and they produce more patents. And this is 20% more than with teams with male leaders. And also organizations with women that have a large female presence also are considered to have higher status. They're in the most admired companies, twice as many. The ones that are in the most admired companies listed on Fortune have twice as many women at the senior management level. So there's a lot of data now to show that having diversity in gender, and this is just gender, I'm not taking any other diversity here, really has shown interesting statistics in terms of the returns, the open-mindedness, the status, the innovation, the creativity, and which to me also leads to then better engagement, morale, productivity. People want to be at those companies that are performing well. And when we have gender diversity, the data is showing us that is happening in corporations and on all organizations. So there is really a business case for this. Go ahead, Ken.
That's great. Yeah, Monica, so we had our first question come in. So it was in response to some of the slides that you shared about the data of where things are at today. And so the question came in, what's your perspective on why we're still in the situation where we're at, where, you know, you have women making up 50% of the population, but not 50% of some of the senior positions in general and or in corporations. What's your take on that?
Yeah, and I guess I would say, Ken, if you could hold that, because some of the research I'm going to show you on what's holding women back could be part of the reason.
Perfect.
Some of the reasons what
Excellent.
men can do.
That's great. Excellent. Sure.
Okay, so we will get into that because I do think that's a relevant point, because what do we do with all this data, right? Especially if we are women looking to get to senior level positions, what do we start doing? So the first topic here then is this concept of how women may be holding themselves back. All right, and there's this great book out there by a woman named Sally Helgesen. She's written in conjunction with Marshall Goldsmith. Many of you might know him. He's one of the best-selling coaches for CEOs out there in the US. And he originally wrote a book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And he had done a lot of research he has many CEO clients, and what he was finding was there was maybe 12 things that was getting in the way of men or these clients getting to be their most effective self. And when the research and Sally started talking to him, they realized that most of these things that he was talking about were very male-centric. And a lot of the 12 things that he was focused on, because he had worked mainly with many, many male clients, as we now know, there's only 4.8% of CEOs who are women. It was not so relevant for women. So he combined with Sally, and they wrote a book called How Women Rise. And these are 12 things that might be habits that are holding women back from getting to the next level. So let's talk about these, because I've recently read this book. I've seen how Sally speak before. She's wonderful. And I started seeing some of these also in organizations where I'm working with women or junior level people trying to get into senior level positions. And I do think a lot of this relates to things like enhancing our emotional intelligence as women. And data does show that women have, in some components, it's not overall higher levels of emotional intelligence, but in some ways the data is showing us that women actually make better leaders because of their emotional intelligence competencies, but we're still not making it to some of the senior levels. Some of the reasons why. So number one and number two, I think, are tied together, but this reluctance to claim our achievements. We really want our work to show for itself and not have to voice or market or sell ourselves in terms of wanting to let us know of what we're doing. So examples would be on our performance review, just writing the regular stuff and not enhancing it with all the extra things that we might have been doing. It might be in meetings, not speaking up that we've done certain things. In the book, it even mentioned that, you know, one particular woman was talking a lot about doing the work, but one of her key skills was making all these great relationships, but her boss never knew she was doing that. And so she was never getting credit for that kind of work. And that was a key component of what he was looking for her to do. So holding themselves back, this is a key thing in terms of just feeling like our merits should speak for ourselves and not having to actually vocalize what and when and how we're doing it. The second one is expecting others to spontaneously notice and reward our contributions. So this is similar to number one in that we want people to really take advantage and understand and notice what we're doing, but that means they have to pay a lot of attention to what we're doing. And if there's a boss above us who has 10, 15, 20, maybe 100 employees, they might not be able to monitor every single thing that you're doing. And we want to be rewarded for that, but sometimes people above us don't even know what those are. Now, the third one also relates a little bit in a cluster to this in terms of women overvaluing their expertise. And this again gets to we focus so much on being competent, doing our work really well, focusing so much on getting the job done and the merit and the technical expertise that we forget that actually as we grow higher and higher in leadership levels, and as Ken mentioned, I do a lot of leadership training courses, and what I always tell everybody, not just the women, is that as you move higher and higher in your leadership roles, it becomes less and less about your technical competence and much more about your relationship skills, your political savvy, your business acumen, all those things that are going to help you build partnerships, build relationships, and get things done, and being able more and more to delegate the work to other people. Now, when we get to number 4, this is starting to just building rather than building and leveraging relationships. Women are very good, and the emotional intelligence competencies is a lot about relationship management, and this comes from Daniel Goleman's book back in the 1990s. But he says that women in general are very good at building strong relationships. Women are almost wired that way, and we open up and we talk to to a lot of people, and we go deep with our friends. But they're saying a challenge for women is that we're great at building the relationships, but we don't always ask our relationships or reach out to our relationship colleagues or friends to actually help us in any way. We feel like it's almost like a bad thing to ask them for help. And so we focus on just building the relationship and having that friendship, but not actually, asking them for a contact, for an introduction to a contact, or helping to get a certain project done because they have certain better tech expertise in one thing or another than I do. And so it's understanding that our relationships can be a give and take. And I think the distinction with men and things that might be holding us back in organizations, women, because especially related to the question that was asked, was that men are very good at this. They leverage their network. They ask for things from their support. They're very good at giving the relationship support as well, but they're not afraid of asking for support as well. And this is also related to number 5, where we're failing to enlist our allies from day one. And so again, we're focused more on building the relationship and building alliances, but not necessarily from the beginning, figuring out ways that we can be of support to each other. So for example, here again, if you're in an organization and starting to network across the organization, let's say you're in IT and you want to start talking to people in procurement or HR or any of the other areas, we're not really good at talking to them to figure out how can we work together to get to a common goal. Now, number 6 is putting your job before your career. This to me is focused on, similar to, I think, overvaluing expertise, where we're focused so much on the day-to-day that we don't really focus on the big strategic vision of where we really want to go with our career. And again, not all of these will apply to every single person, but I would just ask you to think about which 1 or 2 or 3 of these might be actually something that might be resonating for you. And so for some women, they're so focused on the technical aspects, on the day-to-day things of getting things done, that they're not focused so much on strategically, what's a good next step for me to find? How do I interact with somebody so I can get the right networks and colleagues on my course so that I can keep moving? And this is another reason I've seen an organization of what has gotten in the way of women moving up is that this idea of networking, that we're so focused on doing, or we're not actually, there's points in times where family life starts coming in, women start having children, they have less time to build the networks perhaps outside of work or after work. And so they're focused so much on the day-to-day right now that they might not have space or time to look through the strategic. And I do think that is a piece of what's keeping women from advancing in those levels. Some of the data and research would say that about the networks. Now, number 7 and 8 are a little bit more internal here. This is this idea of this, everything has to be perfect. Before we get anything done, we're going to constantly try to work it and rework it and make sure it's so absolutely to the point where everything's done to the T that we never advance anything. What's the saying that, you know, perfection is the something about like if you want everything to be 100%, you're never actually going to get anywhere. It's like it's better to actually have an 80% solution and actually get it moving than never to get anything moving at all. And women can get trapped in this. Perfect.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes, Monica. Don't let perfection be the enemy of the good.
Yes, thank you. I was looking for that quote because it can
I
get in the
think
way.
That's the one. Is that the one? Yep.
Yeah, it sounds about right. And I think we as women can have that tendency, or it seems to be showing up more for women than it does for men, at least in the research coming out of this book. Number 8, the disease to please. Again, we're over-functioning. We're trying to actually please everybody, and we're focused so much on making sure everybody else is doing okay that we are giving more of ourselves than asking for from other people, or setting enough boundaries or expectations of what our needs may be as well. I know as women, I see this often. We're so wired to be nurturing, to be giving. We give so much in our family lives and also in our work lives, and then we feel so depleted. Right? There's nothing else that we're getting back because we're not asking for it, one, or setting enough boundaries, or we're just wired to give and give and give and give. At a certain point, we get really just fatigued. And that's what happens with number 8. Number 9, minimizing. We kind of minimize our own value to the organization, where again, this I think relates to number 1, where we're not emphasizing what we are doing and how much we're giving to an organization. Number 10, we're too much. Sometimes we feel like we're talking too much, doing too much, we're asking for too much instead of actually owning our own worth and going after things. Number 11, that we ruminate, that we focus on things that we might do wrong, which I think is connected a little bit to the perfection trap here, that we overanalyze if we've done anything wrong or if there's a failure or a mistake. And then number 12, letting your radar distract you. I think this is where we start thinking about our intuition for women is often very strong. And sometimes we can see the big picture. And so you're making let's say a presentation to people and you start seeing one person whose facial expression is really off and you're like, oh my God, they must be feeling like my presentation is not very good. And then all of a sudden you go down a rabbit hole and start, really not making your presentation good because you're worried about that one person when it could have nothing to do with you. So I want to stop there just for a second and just kind of let that sink in, see if there's any questions on this, because I think these are some things, and as I've read this book and started thinking about how this shows up in my organization, and a lot of the students and coaches I work with, I realize that a lot of this plays out so often as women are moving from like an individual contributor into early management and even management into the like mid-management, because I feel like women are so hyper focused on being really good. And a lot of the research will say, even as from being young children, as girls, we're taught to be nice and kind and focus on doing our work really well. Where boys, the research has been saying, it's okay, like they're with their testosterone and they play a lot of sports, it's okay to show their feelings of anger and a little bit more exuberance, where girls are trained to be a little bit more focused on doing things well, being nice, being kind, being conscientious. And this is starting to play out in how women are in organizations. I'll stop there
So
for
Monica,
a second. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have one question that popped up from one of the participants. So you've this is I think a fascinating list of what might be holding women back. The question came up, are these in order of importance, or are they in order of, most often, seen in the workplace? And the related question is, of these 12, are there some of these that, from your experience, Monica, come up more often for women, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So I don't think, from what I've read in the book, I don't think that they're in any sort of order of importance. So I wouldn't put it in that way. I would just say these are 12, and think about if any of these relate for you and what you can do about it. And if you want more information, the book certainly goes into more information. But that being said, the ones I see the most, to me, are the relationship ones, because I do think women are really good at it. But I think they're, in my sense, they're not, especially at senior, as women now move into senior levels. So I think at the junior levels, as I was mentioning, when people are getting into management and into mid-management, I think that putting the job before the career, overvaluing expertise, reluctance to claim achievements, right? We're so used to doing the work and not necessarily advancing ourselves come into play. Now, go into senior leadership, what I think comes into play is failing to leverage our relationships, failing to enlist allies from day one. That's, to me, the political savvy and the business acumen of how do we leverage people and our networks and our relationships to get us to where we need to go. And I do think even maybe number 12, letting your radar distract you. I think women have a really good political savvy sense. They can notice, but what to do about it can also be a question, I think, for women as they get to senior levels. And I've worked with many women at senior levels. They want more data on all this stuff because they want to find sponsors or mentors or people that are going to help them get to the next level. And there aren't as many women at those levels. So they really have to understand how to work with seasoned people, how to leverage those dynamics, how to leverage the relationships, how to get allies, how to think strategically, which I think is number 6, and really kind of think outside of just their lane or expertise. So I think for me, how I'm seeing it is that it's different at which level women are at in the organization.
I see.
Okay,
that's helpful.
so,
Thank you.
Yeah. So that, to me, what can we do with all this information from this book, as I've been saying, is find one or two that you think resonate. I know for me, if I had to go back, this disease to please was something I struggled with a lot. It was something that I felt like I constantly had to manage, of wanting to help people, wanting to support people. I went into a helping profession, right, of coaching training. And so this idea of having to pull back and support and give and teach and coach, but not overdo it to the point where the other person doesn't actually have to do their part of it. And that was a real learning for me, to have to step back and not constantly be people pleasing, but really focus on doing what I think is good for them, but also supportive of the advancement of the relationship, of the strategic goals of where we're trying to move. So pick one or two that you think really resonates with you, that you feel like, that is something that I'm doing to hold me back, and really focus on developing that skill. Now, these can be hard to shift. That disease to please took some time for me, because noticing it first is one thing, but then actually shifting those behaviors of learning how to say no to people, learning not to constantly, even when I'm training or giving, to give so much where I feel like then the student doesn't actually have to put their time or effort in to get something done. Took some time to shift, but it's doable. And the third step is get support, right? If you need it, get a colleague or peer support to help you. Let your boss or somebody in the office know that you're looking to do this in your next performance plan. Get a coach that might be able to help you talk through it and see how that's impacting your work and advancement, as well as what you can do to actually move forward in changing that habit. And sometimes having an accountability person can help you change that a little bit more quickly.
Hey, Monica.
Yes.
So this is a question I've got, if that's all right. You do coaching, you do consulting, you do training. Can you speak to how you have maybe either pick one woman that you have worked with, or maybe if you want to synthesize, I'm curious to know in your coaching work, how do you actually help women to do some of these three things that helps them advance in their careers?
Yeah, great question. So if we go up to this again, I would say I've worked with a lot of very senior women in organizations. I've worked with mid-managers too, but the ones that are coming to mind are very senior. And I think the areas where, again, I would probably help them most is number 4, number 5, or number 6. Actually, I'll take one woman, number 6. Both times she came back. She came to me first time because she was transitioning into a new role, and she really had one specific skilled expertise in a very one particular area, but they were asking her to take a role that was very different from hers. And so we really had to start putting the job and career conversation into play. Was it most important to have the skill in the skilled expertise area, which was going to limit her advancement in this particular area, in this particular organization? Or was it more important to take something outside of her career area, perhaps for some time, in order to advance her career and get to a higher level in the organization? And it was a struggle back and forth. She really liked her technical competence, and she was in a leadership role and wanted to stay there, but it was limiting her because there was no more places for her to go up the ladder. Now, the second time she came to me, she had taken the other role, had gotten advanced in the organization, and now she was able to come back to her area of expertise at a more senior level, but it still wasn't finalized that she was going to be able to get that position. And again, it was a conversation of job versus career, and where did she want her career to be, and she was getting closer to retirement. And so it was, again, a conversation of what's most important at this time as you see yourself at the end of retirement, what's most important for you to have achieved. And so it was this constant push-pull, really helping her get clear on what was most important for her at those two big decision points in her advancement.
Thank you. That was really helpful.
Sure. So let's now talk about what men can do to help, because, you know, there's a lot of internal work women can do, and I think women are very good at noticing and self-growth and wanting to advance themselves. But, you know, as women, we cannot do it alone. And this is where a lot of the research and findings are coming out when the question came up earlier of what is holding women back. And some of it is just getting the chances. So this first one, that what men can do, is really this idea of hiring diverse teams. And I'll give you a few examples. We have in the political world with Justin Trudeau in Canada and Macron in France. They made very strong, bold statements when they first came in that they were going to hire half of their cabinet were going to be women. And so just making a bold statement and actually following through on doing it helps advance women into those roles, knowing that they have to find women and knowing that there are competent women that should be and can be leading organizations that represent what society is. And so men can do that. Another example is at the company is Sodexo, and it's a consumer retail company. They do a lot with food in organizations, and it's like a 50,000 person organization. And the CEO realized that a lot of the people that were the customers of their products were women, because it was food related items at cafeterias, at restaurants, at grocery stores. And so he decided that he wanted to advance more women and have more representation of women, so that he would have the people who actually could understand the mindset of the customers in leadership roles. And as a result of that, I don't have the statistics, but statistically, number-wise, from what I remember, the financials actually started increasing in that organization, because the returns were better, because they were actually having people in leadership positions who were able to understand and incorporate the needs of the customer into how they offered the product. So it was a huge change, and it really took men in those three examples to be able to be open-minded, be forward-thinking, and recognizing the needs of their country and or their customer base to be able to advance women into those leadership roles. The second one is becoming aware of unconscious bias, which might be limiting the hire and advancement of women. And I would say this is not just for men, this is for everybody and everybody, because as data shows now in unconscious bias, and it's the last webinar I did with Ken and his group here on unconscious bias, is that statistically it says 80 to 90% of everybody in terms of their bias is unconscious. So we all have it. We're all operating from a operating system that is unconscious, that's driving every decision that we make. And it's being driven by things like our environment where we grew up, our family of origin, the schools that we went to, the neighborhoods that we live in, right? All of these things that we're exposed to. But as a result, we are making decisions that are based upon things that are familiar to us. And so when men, and I'll just use it in this example because we're talking about men and how they can help, women do this too, when they're hiring, might hire based upon fit or culture or people that resonate for them. And often when people do this, they do it and find people that look and sound just like them. And that could mean they're male, could mean they went to similar schools, it could mean that they have the same type of work background, it could be that they live in the same neighborhood, it could be that they go to the same gym or do the same type of workouts. But all of that, when we think about it, can be very limiting in terms of the types of people that we would be working with. And so for men in this particular context is, how do we open up the lens of knowing that women might be really nice to have women in organizational settings that can advance things. It could be opening up the lens of, am I looking for only people just like me, and how do I start thinking about it differently? And that's how we become aware and start doing things differently from a bias, unconscious bias, making it conscious and then making a different choice. The third one is sponsoring women to grow in the organization, as I mentioned, and we saw in the data, and there's limited numbers of senior women in organizations. So when junior women are looking for sponsors, mentors, people that can support them, there's not as many women at the top that can actually pull them up. And so men are going to play an integral role here. The enlightened men, people who are open like Macron and Justin Trudeau and the Sodexo CEO, to start recognizing that they're going to have to play a part in bringing women up into the organization. And this is, I think, some of the limiting thing that has happened in the past for women not being able to grow, is that we haven't had enough sponsors women into senior level positions. And I think this is a really key place where men can support women in growing in the organization. And then the last one, I also mentioned some of the data points that are showing what is limiting for women is this idea of network organizations. And I mentioned during family times when women are starting to have young children, often they have limited time outside of the work environment if they decide to keep working, to then spend extra time after work to go network or go to the golf course or have dinner or do something after work that will keep them in front of mind of senior level people. And those are often men, as we saw in the data. And so for men to consider is, how do they have after work or networking activities that women feel encouraged or want to participate in? And so this, often we talk about men are going to go golfing, right? Or go to the cigar bar, or something that's perhaps a little limiting in terms of what women can participate in because of the interest level. And then secondly, perhaps even doing some networking during the day, at lunch, during breakfast, at a coffee session. So it's not always after hours, where some women could have limited time due to family obligations, because we know women still take a larger percentage of family life on their shoulders statistically as well. I know that's shifting quite a lot these days. And so those are some of the things men can do. I just also show this picture. The UN has a large initiative called He for She, and this is really trying to get more and more men supporting women, that they can help women advance. And so I think it's a great initiative by the UN as well.
Excellent. So Monica, I have another question from participants, if you're open to it.
Sure.
So question, so you've outlined 4 things that men can do. What are some things that you would suggest that men not do that can ultimately help advance women in their careers?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Very interesting. You know, I think what they cannot do is not limit women. I think they have to really be open-minded. I think there's lots and lots of data and research to show why it's there. I think what men can't do is to stay in their own lane. They really do have to advance and think about this from a broader perspective. And I think that's slowly happening, but the unconscious bias is so ingrained for so many of us, and not just men. This, like I said, is for every single human being has this. So it really takes a lot of openness, a lot of consciousness, a lot of really digging deep for everybody to figure out this is not just a woman's issue. This is a people issue. If we really want women to advance, I think men can't stay on the sideline.
That's great.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And so that's really the data I have for you. I'm going to leave it now for more questions if there are some. I think this is a good stopping point just to give people something to think about for women, what we can do for ourselves, and then what we can do to help maybe ask for support from men, or share this with your male colleagues or spouses or friends so that they start also getting enlightened on what's possible for them to support you in your growth and development.
That's great. So we do have another question, and it comes back to the slide, Monica, that you shared about the things that women can do. And so the question came up again in your work, coaching with women. What are some specific ways that you've helped women to that number 4 issue? Focus on building and leveraging relationships.
Yeah, another one where I would say I work a lot with women on this one. So it's recognizing, first of all, just who is in their networks. So another senior person, she had a very good relationship with her boss, but as she was moving into a more senior position, she was now bringing a bunch of her peers now were going to start reporting to her. And she also, there was some 360 feedback where there was some issues in those peer relationships. And so it was really working to enhance those relationships, build the trust, leverage them so that she could then learn what their competencies and strengths were so that they could now help her build a high functioning team. At the same time, she really had to be politically savvy with people at her own peer level to then take what she was doing in her organization with succeed really well and advance that and mentor other people. But also she had to work to leverage relationships up with her boss and the senior level person to keep advancing what her needs were in terms of her career growth and advancement and where she wanted to go. And so it was really building relationships in a 360 way, but leveraging them to help the organization grow, but also continue her career advancement because she had very strong ambitions of where she wanted to succeed and grow in the organization. So it's really shifting the mindset of doing it from the work to building and leveraging those relationships in all capacities, in all directions.
That's great. I have one question that I have, and then a question from the audience. So on the audience side, someone asked the question, which again I thought was interesting in the beginning, that so many people were interested about the issues about how men can help. So the question that came from the participants, Monica, is, are there some things that you have done in your work with clients, maybe from a consulting perspective, to sort of set the stage for men to, as you said, not sit on the sidelines and be part of the solution to help make the workplace more attractive to women and help women advance their careers? Are there some things that you've done from an organizational perspective?
Yeah, we've done it in some of our training classes, sometimes just bringing in senior
I
level people that will allow women to start networking with them and to asking them questions and perhaps getting their contact information to get them exposed to senior level men that might eventually create a contact and network or somebody that they could actually get a spot from. So I think just providing those networks and relationships by bringing senior level men into organizations that women can meet them. I think even in consulting, I would say similarly, although it's not so consciously focused on just helping the women, but it really is, again, how do we in change management consulting efforts really get senior level leaders bought in, and that means we get, when we think about champions for a change, that we get diversity in who we're bringing in as champions. And so that means it might be by role, it might be by gender, it might be by location, it might be by hierarchy of leadership. And so that we really advance this idea of diversity and who we're choosing as champions for a consulting or change effort. So I definitely do that when we're working, so that we get multiple different voices and multiple different representations, and that to me would also include gender representation.
Yep, that's great. So the question I have, and again, Monica, you may see it differently, but when I look at the list that you have up on the screen, from my perspective, number 7, 8, 9, maybe 10, all fit. There's some connection with those things. Again, the way I see it, it's around, at my headset about work. And so again, if you can describe either one or maybe synthesize maybe your experience coaching several women on how you've helped them deal with that mindset perspective about their career, I'd be interested to hear that.
Yeah, so I think for this one, I think when I think about it is women, perhaps a junior woman that I've coached that's trying to get a little bit more into senior positions. And sometimes that perfection trap of their work has to be really 100%, or now I'm coaching coaches as they start trying to get into coaching. And it's really, especially in the beginning, of they really want to be very good at what they do. They want to be perfect as a coach, because they're actually very seasoned in perhaps other skills, consulting, or they're executives or something. And now all of a sudden, this idea of they're so good at what they currently do, and all of a sudden they have to come in with a beginner's mindset can be really challenging. And so it's really working with them on that mindset that it's okay. It's almost like we're learning a whole new skill. Like, let's say we're going on learning a new hobby, like playing an instrument or playing a new sport. We're not going to be perfect at the beginning. And it's like a little child. We have to let them, as they're learning to walk, fall down multiple times. So it's helping them think through this idea of failure, and that it's okay, and that it's a beginner's mindset, and that in the beginning, as we're learning something new or getting into more seasoned things, that we have to let go of that and learn something, the relationships part more, that we can fail and we can have a beginner's mindset in order to advance to something better.
That's great. Last question. Again, just, given that so many people were interested in this, obviously I would imagine that your message to men would be, don't sit on the sidelines. I wonder, is there any other, if you were drafting the copy to the news story in the Washington Post about men supporting women in the workplace, what would the headline say? What are the big takeaways that men should get from this session, and how we can help?
I mean, what comes to mind is your daughter needs you, your sister, your wife needs you to help them advance, right? Because men are really, I think, caring. They want to support, especially when they think of people really close to them, like their daughters or the next generation, or their spouse, or their sisters or right mothers. And so
Mm.
your daughter needs you, right? In order to help create this and help her advance, you need to step up and really be open to supporting and figuring out how to create something new.
I love it. That's great. That's great. I don't have a daughter, but but I do have a wife and do have lots of friends. So, Monica, thank you. Let's move to the next slide, and we'll try to move to wrapping things up. So, as I said at the beginning of the session, and I think Monica, as she has done last year, she's given us some real food for thought about what we can do to support women in leadership in organizations. And so one of the things that we're big believers in is helping, every time we interact with clients, we want to help them to translate insights into actions. So 2 questions I'd like for you to think about and maybe jot down on a piece of paper, and we're going to put these in the follow-up survey that we're going to send you, is what's one thing that you learned or confirmed from today's session? What's one thing you learned or confirmed from today's session? And what's one step that you can do to help your organization deal with the issues related to women in the workplace? So what's one thing you learned or confirmed, and what's one step you're going to take? So next slide, please. So one of the things that I spoke with Monica as we're preparing for this, and she was frankly most generous in saying yes, is that she has agreed for the first 3 people who send me an email. So if you would like to, if you're either a woman and you're dealing with some of these issues that Monica ran through with us about what are holding back women, and you'd like to spend 30 minutes with Monica, or B, you're a man and you've looked at the list of things that Monica outlined in terms of how we can help, and you'd like some coaching around how to do that, or C, you're either a woman or a man and you want to talk to Monica about what your organization can do to more effectively support women in leadership. Again, Monica is willing to have a complimentary coaching session with up to 3 people. You send an email to me, we will make it happen. Okay? So lastly, last slide is we want to hear from you. So I believe, and Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe in less than 48 hours, you're going to get an email from me asking for your feedback. We'll ask you the 2 questions that I've outlined. We'll ask you about your overall reaction to the webinar. That data is really helpful to us as we're thinking about how to continuously improve the quality of webinars. If in fact you'd like a copy of the recording or a copy of the slide deck, my email address is there, and we're happy to send that to you. So before we close out, I want to do 2 things. One, I want to tell you that we're going to do a session in April. The date is April 30th. The session will begin at 11 a.m. It's conducted by another one of our colleagues, Catherine Zoranis, a really capable consultant and trainer. And she's going to be talking about appreciation in the workforce and how, again, what's the business reason for doing more of that, and then what are some specific ways that you can show more appreciation to your colleagues, your coworkers, people that work with you. So that's an important topic. So the last thing I want to do is I want to thank Monica and Sarah. Sarah, thanks for doing all the back end stuff to get us to today. And Monica, thank you again for sharing some really, I think, some valuable information, for answering everyone's questions. And, as always, I learned something from this. So Monica, I'll let you have a final word, and then we'll sign off for today.
Sure. Thanks so much, Ken and Sarah. I appreciate both of you, and to all of you that were here, I appreciate your time, and I hope you got something out of it, and I look forward to anybody that's looking for a coaching session.
That's great. Well, Monica, thank you. And again, if people are interested in taking us up on that offer, you just send me an email and we'll make it happen. It looks as though Sarah put up the follow-up survey on the screen so you can see it, and some information about upcoming events and information about coaching registration. She couldn't be more organized if she wanted to. So it's all there. I'm assuming Sarah will put the coaching registration in the follow-up survey.
That's correct.
With that, that's the end of today's session. Thanks to all of you for participating and asking Monica some great questions. Again, Monica, thanks for a really enlightening session. And with that, I hope everyone has a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ken.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.